Today, we're diving into a case that is, well, it's one of the most disturbing in Canadian history. Take a look at this number, 49. That's how many women pig farmer Robert Pickton confessed to murdering. 49. And now, look at this number, 6. That's how many murders he was actually convicted of. The gap between those two numbers, it's just staggering, right? So how on earth did Canada's most prolific serial killer get away with it for so long? That's the question we're digging into today. We're gonna unpack this whole chilling case to figure out how so many warnings were ignored and how so many lives were tragically lost. Okay, to really get a handle on the man who could do something like this, you've got to go way back. We have to start with his childhood, a really dark and disturbing childhood on the family farm. I mean, Robert and his brother David, they basically grew up in squalor. Their mother, Louise, she was notorious for caring more about the pigs than her own kids' hygiene. Can you imagine? These boys were worked to the bone, just grueling hours, and they were often so filthy that the kids at school had this cruel nickname for them, the Stinky Piggies. So right from the get-go, they were completely isolated. But then, when Robert was about 12, he saved up his own money and bought a calf. And for him, in this really bleak life, this calf was everything. It was this rare source of affection, and he got so attached to it. He even said he wanted to sleep with it, he played with it. It was his one friend. And then, the unthinkable happened. He found his beloved calf hanging in the barn, butchered, just slaughtered. You have to imagine what that does to a kid. It was this massive, defining trauma. And it seems like that single moment just twisted his entire relationship with life, death, and, well, with caring about anything, forever. All right, so let's fast forward a bit. Robert and his brother are adults now, they've inherited the farm, and they turned it into something much darker than just a place to raise pigs. So in 1996, get this, the brothers register a charity. It's called the Piggy Palace Good Times Society. Sounds almost wholesome, right? Like it's for hosting events for good causes. But that name, it was just this grotesque mask for the horrifying reality of what was really going on at that farm. Yeah, the Piggy Palace was anything but a charity. It basically became this lawless, grimy, makeshift nightclub. We're talking huge, drunken raves with up to 1,800 people. It attracted biker gangs like the Hells Angels, and it drew in vulnerable sex workers from Vancouver's downtown Eastside. The city did eventually shut the parties down over zoning violations, but by then, the damage was done. The farm had a reputation as a very dangerous place. And this is where this story gets, well, just infuriating. We have to talk about the repeated failures by the authorities to stop this guy. Failures that happened long before anyone knew the true scale of his crimes. I mean, when you look at the timeline, it's just one devastating missed opportunity after another. In 1997, a woman literally escapes the farm, bleeding after Pickton stabs her. He's charged with attempted murder, and then the charges just dropped, inexplicably. 2 years later, a tip comes in that Pickton has a freezer full of human flesh. A freezer, and it's not taken seriously. You even have a farmhand who repeatedly warns the police that he's finding women's purses and IDs all over the property, and he's dismissed. These weren't just mistakes, this was a pattern. And here's the really awful truth. The victims were mostly Indigenous women and sex workers from the downtown Eastside, a community that, let's be honest, the authorities had marginalized for years. Their disappearances just weren't treated with the urgency they deserved. And every single time a warning was ignored, this monster was allowed to just keep on hunting. So, women kept disappearing from the downtown Eastside. This went on until February 2002. And the thing that finally brought police to the farm, it wasn't even a murder tip. It was a search warrant for illegal firearms. But what they found when they got there? Well, it kicked off one of the largest, most horrifying forensic investigations in Canadian history. So while he's in custody, the police put an undercover officer in a cell with him. A classic move, and it worked. Pickton started talking. He made this chilling confession, basically boasting that he'd killed 49 women. And his reason for getting caught? I made my own grave by being sloppy. He wanted to make it an even 50. And back at the farm, the search of his property was it was a house of horrors. The stuff they found in his trailer alone is just bizarre and terrifying. A .22 revolver with a dildo crudely attached to it as a silencer, handcuffs, a syringe with some kind of mystery blue liquid, Just an absolutely horrifying collection of items. It was a total nightmare. The prosecution's description of the scene is something you just can't unhear. They describe finding the heads of the individuals cut in two, vertically. They were stored in a bucket, in a freezer, along with severed hands and feet. The level of depravity, it's incomprehensible. And amidst all this horror, it is so important that we remember the women, the actual people behind the headlines. You know, the case was so incredibly complex that the trial only went ahead on 6 of the 27 murder charges that were filed. So let's talk about the 6 women whose murders finally brought him to justice. There was Serena Abbotsway, who was known for being so protective of her younger foster siblings. Mona Wilson, who was a mom to a young son. Andrea Joesbury, who was really trying to turn her life around when she disappeared. Brenda Wolfe, a talented hairdresser and a devoted mom. Georgina Papin, a proud Cree woman and a mother of 7. And Marnie Frey, whose dad's first clue she was missing was seeing her face on a poster. These were real people with families who loved them. So on December 9th, 2007, the jury came back. Guilty on all 6 counts of second-degree murder. The judge gave him the maximum possible sentence, life in prison with absolutely no chance of parole for 25 years. He called Pickton's actions senseless and despicable. And really, that's an understatement. But, you know, a conviction like that isn't really the end of the story. Not for the families, not for the community. The case has cast this long, dark shadow for decades. And then, his death in 2024, it just brought everything rushing back. So get this, in February 2024, he actually became eligible for day parole. Can you imagine the dread the victims' families must have felt? But just a few months later, Pickton was attacked in prison by another inmate. He was speared in the head with a broken-off broom handle. And his death, it brings up this final haunting question about the farm itself, a place that's just so contaminated by this pure evil. What do you do with a piece of land where so many people were murdered? What becomes of it? Well, there are really 2 main ideas floating around for what to do with it. One idea is to turn it into a memorial park, you know, a peaceful place for remembrance. The other idea is to just leave it. Let it be an abandoned cemetery, a stark, solemn reminder of what happened there. And I think the words of activist Jamie Lee Hamilton really put it best. She said, "The land is a cemetery and should be treated with dignity." And at the end of the day, that's what it is. Whatever happens to that land, it is and always will be a final resting place. A cemetery for dozens of women whose memories deserve nothing less than our utmost respect and dignity.